Thanks for joining us. If you haven't been to one of our meetups before, online or in person, double welcome. Normally we like to do these things in person. Back in the pre-COVID world, we aimed to do one meetup a quarter in Melbourne and one a quarter in Sydney. Back in it was April, we moved online to get a bit of diversity while we were, not able to be in the office as much. And I really love it. It's different. It's not necessarily the same as doing this in person. I don't think it'll ever replace it, but I think it's a really nice addition to what we do. And I'm pretty confident that it's here to stay in our broader event offering. So thanks for coming along. Why do we do these? So for me, my role at Betfair is to support automation and everything that means. So people who want to automate on the exchange in all the different facets. And so much of that for me, it comes down to community. So automation can be quite a lonely journey and quite a long journey. And it can be hard to find other people to share it with, especially if you don't know other people in person. So it's going to be a good way to meet people, to share your experiences, to share your learnings, and to learn from some of the myriad of really supportive people that we have in this community who are prepared to share their learnings. We've heard from lots of great people in the past tonight. We have Nick Weinholt and Michael Lean, both of whom are longtime Betfair customers, and I'm big fans of both of them, and they've both got some very interesting experiences that they're prepared to share, which we're very grateful for. As Betfair, our philosophy, and you guys have probably all heard me do this spiel, but our philosophy is to create winners. So my job is to try and help you be more successful. And that again is where this comes from. It really helps to be able to have people in our community who are prepared to share what's worked for them. So you can, learn a slightly quicker way as opposed to, doing it all yourself. In terms of the community, one of my favorite things that is going on these days is a really active Slack community, started by some of the guys in the community, which is awesome. If you're not part of the Slack community and you want to be, feel free to shoot us an email and we can send you an invitation. I'll get one of my team to post in the chat box at the bottom our email address, automation@betfair.com.au. Shoot it through and we'll add you in. There are a couple of things happening in Slack at the moment. If you haven't seen, they'll be popping up through the next little while. We're looking for feedback from you guys on what sort of datathons you'd like to see us run over the next year. And we've got our thoughts, but we want to know what you'd like to see. So there's a poll that Ash is posting. If you can contribute with your opinions, we'd love to hear them. We've also got a pretty cool session coming up, which Nick's going to be running with me in a little while. We'll let you know the date when it's announced, but it'll be less of a meetup and more of a walkthrough of how he goes about automating a racing model, which again, I think is super valuable for anyone who hasn't done it before. So there's a couple of things coming up about this evening. So I'm about to stop waffling and then I'll introduce Michael and Nick, then a little bit of a different approach to before. So we're going to do a little bit with Michael one-on-one. He's going to share some of his key learnings from his Betfair experience. And then we'll swap across and Nick will do an equivalent, sort of share some of the key takeaways he wants to, he wished that someone had told him when he started. And then we'll go with our normal Q&A. So down the bottom of the screen, there's a box that says Q&A. You're welcome to answer questions at any time, ask questions at any time, as you think of them so you don't forget. And then we will pick it up as we get to sort of that point in the evening. Hi, Michael. So, background, what's your 2-sentence summary of who you are?
Sure. So hi everyone. Yes, I started life as an engineer. Well, that was my my adult life as an engineer. But I've always loved mathematics, statistics, modelling, data analysis. I've always had a passion for that sort of thing. And so engineering led into maths, which led into various careers doing optimization of mobile phone networks, optimization of supply chains, anything where I can tweak a number and adjust something to find a maximum or a minimum or some sort of curve fitting, I'll do. I mean, even right back at a young age as a kid, I would throw cards into a hat, playing cards into a hat, and count how many were in there successfully, and then keep stats about, whether I was improving and what my averages were and all that sort of stuff. I just like the numbers more than the throwing of the cards, so that was always my fun. So I've done that for years, and I've always been into data analysis. And I guess that led me eventually into some ideas that people had given me about a lay system on horse racing. And, that led me into web scraping, which led me slowly into automation, which then directed me to an idea that I've had for years about soccer and AFL and various sports, where I had an idea for a model that I wanted to work on. And I've been doing that now for 7 or 8 years, I guess. Yeah, about that time.
And why did you come to Betfair for your sort of wagering choice?
Yeah, so I discovered, by accident, as I was doing this web scraping a few years ago, I discovered this whole thing about this API where I could get data. Because I was doing what I was doing very manually on the web scraping and calculations and spreadsheets and that sort of stuff. And I started to learn that, hang on a minute, I can, and this is all done all my stuff's done in Excel VBA. So, I'm one of the exceptions, I think, on the Slack channel. I see all these wonderful guys doing all sorts of fancy coding, but I'm on VBA through and through. Not very good at it, but it works. There's thousands and thousands of lines of code, and they work. Most people would laugh if they saw some of the stuff I've written, but it's stable. I can say that. But yeah, so I came to Betfair because of the fact that I could automatically pull down the data. I could do the analysis, and then I suddenly worked out, okay, now we can start to place bets and we can start to do other things. And eventually, over time, I built up mine. So now it runs 24/7, 365 days a year. I don't have to touch it except to do little minor upgrades, and it just churns. And I try to keep track of what is hopefully a growing pool of funds. It's not always that way, but I keep track of it and fine tune it and watch what's going on. But Betfair allowed that to happen because of the API.
So with your automation, just for my interest, because I don't think we've ever discussed it with all our conversations, is your automation through like a direct API route? I know you said it was VBA, but is it direct, or is it using BetAngel or Grass or one of those ones?
No, direct through Betfair. Direct connections there through there, and some very simple queries that pulls data down into Excel sheets. It has to be in Excel sheets because I use the solver function in Excel to do a lot of the calculations.
You kill me.
I'm speeding up slowly and surely, and then it does the calculations itself, and it sends the bets back off automatically based on a whole bunch of rules that have been built up over time, to work.
It's funny. I remember a very long time ago, you and me having a conversation before this team even existed, about how valuable you thought it would be to have a community that we could share.
Yeah, exactly. We started talking. I just thought it'd be great to hear from so many people, because I guess one of the things that for getting started in Betfair was the fact that I just wanted to know that there were some people that were successful. I mean, in my head, some people make money on the stock market, some don't. You hear about the people that yell the loudest, and everybody who can.
Now, have we lost Michael or have we lost me? Can someone tell me whether this is me or Michael?
You're still there, Karen.
Okay, cool. That's okay. I can deal with that. So we will pause our intro with Michael and we'll go across to Nick. There we go. See, 21st century, we can make this work. So, Nick, hi.
Hey.
Long time to get here, but I'm glad that we're here. Thank you for coming this evening. So your background is a little bit different to Michael's, yeah? Where Michael's more sort of data first, programming second. You're more programming first and data second. Is that a fair
Yeah,
way?
definitely so. Like I was a normal software engineer for 15 years, mostly working in financials. And then probably for my sins, I ended up working for a very large proprietary trader in the horse racing space and did that for a few years. And then when that finished up, when you're working for someone, you always think, I could do it better. I'll come and back my own sort of judgment and performance. And from that, started building things on Betfair and also various other outlets. I'm probably different to a few that I'm probably only half Betfair, and I still take early prices. Mm-hmm. So there's only a limited amount of automation with that. So I'm pretty scrappy hitting those minimum bet laws at 9 a.m. each morning.
Well, you find your edge, right?
Yeah.
Find your edge wherever you can.
Yeah. Betfair is wonderful, but it's a different market to the corps. Very different.
Yeah, and if you can find one edge in one place and one edge in another, that's great.
Yeah. I think we're absolutely blessed in Australia with our different outlets, minimum bet laws across most of the country. That's expanding to greyhounds. We've got some wonderful small bookmakers, still really wonderful, absolutely great people. And most of the corps follow the rules. So it's not a bad playing field at all, I think, for your average punter at the moment.
And you're very strongly racing focused, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, you don't do anything that isn't racing, yeah?
No, like I'll have a bet.
Properly.
Yeah, but properly, yeah.
The other's punting, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. It's all thoroughbreds, mostly because of minimum bet laws, and mostly in minimum bet law states. So not much in WA because any advantage you get will be crushed a bit quickly.
And how long have you been doing things on Betfair in your own stead?
3 years or so.
Goes fast, right?
Yeah, it does. It's and it sort of creeps up on you, right? Like you build a little thing and it becomes a bigger thing, and like it gets its own momentum. It's the API access is great because there's nothing worse than sitting there at 9 a.m. playing whack-a-mole with corporate prices.
And getting on or not, as the case may be. Thank you. We might try back to Michael, and then I'll come back to you in a sec.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hey,
you got
Michael.
me now?
I do. Currently, I was horrified that I thought it was me. Very happy with it was you because Melbourne CBD, but my internet is still shocking.
No.
So, again, back to where we were talking a very long time ago, something you wanted to do even then was to be able to share some of the learnings that you'd come across in your journey, that you kind of wish that you'd had.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you share if you could go back and tell yourself, 8 years ago?
Yeah.
What would you say?
Absolutely. So number one is it's possible. That was the key thing. I didn't know at the time, whether I was going to spend hours and hours doing this and just wouldn't be able to, be successful. I wanted to know there were people that were successful. So the key message to anybody starting up was it can be done. I'm not quitting my day job yet, but I've got stuff that's churning away and it works. And I see people in the communities talking, and it's been fine. So you can see that they're doing okay. I would say don't be in a rush. It takes 4 years to become an engineer at university, and you don't earn any money while you're doing that. It takes 4 years then as a junior engineer, if that's what you're doing, and even after 8 years, you're still not a good engineer. So don't be in a rush to think it's a quick win. It is a long process, and you can do it for life. When I eventually quit my day job, I'm sure I'll be tweaking and churning and still doing this stuff. So use that early time to learn and to develop your skill set, just like you would if you were at a university or starting a new job or doing anything else. So yeah.
early on in my Betfair journey, someone pretty successful said to me that they said that a decent model took about a year to build and productionize. Now there are obviously exceptions to that, but you know, as a rule of thumb, I don't think that it's that far off the mark. You know, and you know, things that are easy have been done.
Yeah, that's exactly
you want to
right.
find an edge, you got to do something a little bit different, and often, as you said, that does take work.
Yeah, and people will jump in thinking, "Oh, I've got an idea," and I you know, little quick wins, and you have some wins here and stuff there. But you know, it's you're fighting against. We're on a pool here. You know, we're in a they're all sharks out there. You've got to learn to swim because everybody's all clambering for their own piece of the pie and trying to get to the top. So don't think you can jump in there straight away. Everybody's got a slight edge, and you have to adjust it. You have to adjust it over time. Something that works this year and next year might start to fail because somebody comes in and they're doing something better. So you've always got to have parameters that you can tweak or something else to learn.
Do you have like a ballpark time, that you know, interval that you like to use for making those adjustments?
Yeah, well, my model has been quite stable for the last couple of years, and what I now do is I haven't introduced many new parameters to the model or done anything major, but what I do is I try not to tweak them too quickly. I don't react too quickly anymore. I'll just you know, I'll wait, and I'll force myself to wait a few weeks at a time and go, okay, how's it moving? Is it still, you know, is it tracking sideways? Is it moving up? Can I do anything? What has been my impact? Because you do get into an analysis paralysis. Absolutely, you can. You know, I'm 2 steps away from becoming, you know, John Nash in A Beautiful Mind and having a wall full of formulas and just calculating and going crazy. And I could sit there and rock backwards and forwards all day finding patterns and stuff. And you've kind of got to step away and go, no, understand what it's doing. Look at the long term trends, and don't go over tweaking everything. That's a key takeaway I'd say to anybody. Don't tweak too much. Just let it run for a bit.
I remember Stu Williamson at our very first Melbourne meetup. He said one of his sort of sense checks was when he started going into like over analysis drive.
Yeah.
Like divide by something random and see if you get the same sort of distribution. So his one was days of the week. He's like, oh, I'm better on some days, you know, worse on others, yada yada. Then he's like, okay, I'll module F7, and he found he had basically exactly the same distribution. So you know, sometimes you go too far down the rabbit hole and lose perspective.
You can do, and that's one of the examples I was going to say. You know, analyze stuff in continuous variables, not the categorical stuff. You know, even if you're horse racing it, you can sort your winning days to top to bottom, and you might find you lose the most on a Tuesday. If you then go, okay, well, I don't bet on a Tuesday, then suddenly a few days later, then suddenly I'm not going to bet on a Thursday. I'm not going to, and you've just cut yourself out. Understand what the continuous variables are, the parameters in your model are that you can adjust to fine tune those things, not the big, you know, discrete variables, if you like.
I think it can be hard sometimes to sort of make judgment calls as to what fits in each of those. So like things like you're less of a racing better, I know, but you know, things like track, you know, in some people's models are just really bad at a certain track. And maybe that's actually symptomatic of the quality of the data that they're sourcing for that track, or you know, there are lots of reasons for it, but sort of knowing when there's that correlation causation thing and when it's just random variance, I think can be tricky. I'm concerned that we've lost Michael again. I think we might have. If we have, that's okay. That's all right. We can be flexible. Nick, you're up.
Hey, so I'll actually slides to try to structure my thoughts. So let me try to.
That's very much how you think, isn't it?
Get to them.
No, sorry to throw you in the deep end. We're glad we got you. There we go.
That's up, the general principles slide.
Yep, that looks good.
So these, what I did for a number of years when I was in full-time professional betting was exotics. So all day be a data engineer and bet on exotics on every exotic product on every race in Australia into every tote. So my bots are sort of, this is the exact style of development that I would use for doing that. So this scales massively. Yeah, this is betting on every first four combination in the Everest style stuff, which is a lot of bets. So keep your bots really simple. There's a tendency for your bot to become a monolith when you're doing it yourself. So you're adding this and that, you're doing all your data collection. One of the real problems you get with that is then you want to share something or do a different bot or do an ensemble model, and you're cooked because you just split the code base and things devolve from there. So keep it really simple. Do really simple models first. Don't try to do some ARB or scalping thing. It's so hard. There's so much state to keep track of in scalping and stuff like that. You'll cook yourself. One of the key things is don't blow up. Everyone, it's so easy to blow up when you're doing automation. The first thing, like the first 20 things you should think about is doing this safely. I've got the next slide on that. And do it on a familiar sport. Probably the glory days of Belarusian Premier League are past us, those wonderful days. Minsk and some of those really wonderful, there was that one that was very hard to pronounce. They were funny days, but it's probably do stuff you understand. In terms of safety, put in a kill switch. Kill switch is the first things I do in my code, and I can turn off anything from my phone. There's nothing worse when you're sitting in your car and you realize your Betfair balance is down significantly and you can't shut the thing off. You're trying to get neighbors to flick the power or something stupid, or have a kill switch and make it really easy to use. Before you do a bet, put some sanity checks on stuff like market percentage, number of runners, max odds to lay. I was doing a model earlier this week and found at one stage there was a $940 BSP place winner, a Mawulumba, believe it or not. So if you would have, like just say you've got a laid model for the place and you've laid something at $940 because most place prices are below 10. Yeah, that's a pretty big bust up. Record the markets where you've placed a bet, so you're not, the first spot I did just kept betting and betting and betting into the same market. It laid.
I think everyone has done that.
Yeah, and the account's empty, right? It's
test.
Other safety mechanisms: max bet per runner, max bet per market, max. Just keep thinking. Don't have all your money in your account, or I'm not sure if you can use different wallets. And there's the player protection settings. A lot of people don't know about them, but you can go in there and set those up. So really think about safety first. Redis is a key element for building your models. It's an in-memory data store. Really cheap, $20 to $50 for a hosted instance. It supports notifications, so you can say, yeah, my model's done calculating. You go place the bets. Incredibly fast, just sub-millisecond response time. Nothing in racing moves that quick, right? You see the totes still changing after a runner's crossed the line. You don't need sub-millisecond for anything in racing for mine. Keep your key naming really neat. And if you do need to process every single message off the price queue, consider Kafka. And that's what I did when I was doing it professionally. So here's sort of some screenshots of my Redis. You can see I've used colons in the key names, and it gives you this really nice sort of hierarchical structure. So on here on the right, I stream the price of, I've just got one program, which just, because you can only have 200 active connections to the streaming API. So for all Australian horse racing, I just stream every race and store it there. So if I've got the Betfair market ID, I can just go and instantly get the last traded price and everything of a runner. when you're doing racing, the hardest thing is the damn program management, the race timings. It looks so nice at 11 a.m. and it can go crook for 1,000 different reasons. It's
Really?
comical. We had that guy out there with a mower at some country track the other day. There was sorry?
Someone trying to, where was it? Where were we when they were trying to arrest someone the other day?
Yeah, Wyong. There was a convicted prisoner on the course at Wyong. They had to shut that. They send the wrong. It's just a mess. Huge pain with delays. Jockey will get hurt. It just throws everything to hell. Dynamic odds have got a great API which manages this. I recommend anyone use that. I recently cut over from the Tab API, and Dynamic Odds is way better. The customers.
The new API or the old one?
I'm still on the old one, but I converted from XML to JSON.
Yeah. The new one's
the old API is fine.
So the new one's a streaming one, and it's
okay. Cool. Yeah. The customer support is absolutely awesome. You put in a query, and a guy called, I think it's Scott Goulet, will have you an answer in dead set a minute. He's a champion. You get very fast updates when there's that delay in the race schedule. And you get the Betfair win market. So one of the real problems with your data sources, and obviously the Kensington track at Randwick is the sort of prime example. It's got at least 5 names. There can be Royal Randwick, Kensington, or Randwick Insert. And Kangaroo Island, it's just a mess. So to be able to get the Betfair win market ID is really good. And you can get all your court prices too, if that's model input. So Betfair API is the way to go. And this is really exciting. Well, one of the real questions is, when do you submit your bets, right? Whether it's a scheduled jump time or 15 seconds past. You might have seen it just before COVID. They actually had a bloke behind the barriers with an iPad who would say, the barrier 8's loaded, barrier 12's loaded. He can't go on course at the moment, but as soon as the COVID restrictions are over, they're going to re-add it back to the Pro product and hopefully in the API. So you'll be able to see that, there's 6 runners in the race and 3 barriers are loaded. So then you can submit your bets.
We're working on for our offering as well. So I don't know whether you're familiar with we offer a race status API for everywhere except Australia.
Yeah.
And we are working on trying to get Australian things in there. So that would give a very similar pulse as well, which would be really, really cool.
It's very hard because sometimes they go early too. They went early the other day, somewhere in Queensland, out of Ipswich or something. You're like 20 seconds early. It's always a pain. So the way I structure it is, you've got your normal Betfair API, and I grab that data, the market book and market catalog, whack that into SQL because that doesn't move, right? That changes every 6 hours at most. Then I get a request market subscription on the streaming API, and all those prices go straight into Redis. And then from dynamic odds, I get the meetings. And then the actual bet bot's really simple. Every loop, I check the kill switch, because there's no point putting the kill switch on and you only check it at program startup, right? Every time you're going to do something, check that kill switch. I've got a global kill switch and a kill switch per application. If you ever want to see how important it is, read the post-mortem on a company called Knight Capital. They're a high-frequency trading firm that deployed new software that at market open lost $500 million. And they couldn't turn it off. They didn't know how to turn off their software. And they went broke. Been around for 100 years, half hour, they went broke for the lack of a kill switch. Knight Capital. It's an intriguing read. So check the kill switch, get the next race, and check you haven't submitted bets on that race. Get the prices, generate your potential bets, and then check that timing, which we then mentioned, and then go back to one. So I've just got stuff in a loop in a console app. Pretty simple. When you are developing your models, executing these models can become a real slow thing. Calculating, like the first 4 on the Everest or a Melbourne Cup where you've got, 23 runners is a very slow thing. So if you don't want to be doing, getting bigger and bigger machines. for that. If you do it in any of these standard technologies, you can then put that on a cloud platform. So Google Cloud, you can just get an XGBoost model, throw it up there and execute it. And that also can help with the versioning of your model. Always keep logs, because you come back at the end of the day and you'll see, I just bet on some $42 runner, a Mackay 7 that had no chance of winning. How the hell did I do that? So you want to be able to reverse engineer that bet to work out why you did that. Market edges. This is a really good point, I think, for Michael too. The most valuable thing I got working in betting professionally is sort of seeing that you can win, right? And you can win lots. You hear the Jelko story, you go, oh, is that real? And you can absolutely win. That's the key thing. Working out where your market edge comes from is really hard. The tendency is to grab Benter's paper from 94 and then try to do that. And that's really hard. If you're going on price and sectionals against the big guys at a metro meeting on a Saturday, man, that's a hard place to make a living. Look for softer edges. There's some soft edges out there, and find them and be scrappy, because you can still make significant coin on that, especially with NBL and with the exchange. We confirmed this is right. Warrnambool, which ran today, if you blind laid every favourite in a BSP era, you've made about 4% on pot. And my intuition about that, which I actually got from a guy on Sky, is these courses where you're getting runners from a lot of different areas. So Warrnambool, Mackay, where you're against Central and North Queensland, and Bordertown, which, by the name suggests, is on the border. When you're getting runners coming from a lot of different areas, lining up form is very hard. And when you get that, where it's hard to do form, the favourites will often be overpriced. So there's tracks that are way worse than Warrnambool for favourites. Bordertown's way over 10% for a blind lay on the favourite. Race caller tips, believe it or not, in country areas, Craig Sand, who's on Darwin, it'll be a Sky 2 only meeting on the Blue Channel. His tips 10% on BSP the last 2 years. Incredible, right? You wouldn't think that edge would still exist when it's right there on the bottom of the screen. And if you want to go back to Sky 1, there's blokes there you can lay. I'll give you the tip. If you just take, everyone knows the names, take that, go and look at those tips if you want to have a bit of a lay.
I know that you like using tips as part of your models, don't you?
100%, yeah. Mine. And if we get to talk about avoiding variance later on, I talked to a professional, a guy who does stock market models, and he said, your retail guys, what they'll do is they'll get one model and they'll put 300 different filters on it, right? The stuff, no betting on it. I'm not going to bet on Townsville when it's a soft 6 or below after race 4. Some bizarrely obscure filter, which only ever applies to one meeting. He said professionally what they do is have an ensemble of 100 non-correlated models, which are a bit soft, right? You want your model a little bit soft. If it's very hard and all these parameters, you can be picking up noise. So if your model's a bit soft and you've got lots of them, that will really help you. The good thing with tipsters is most of them do their own thing. They'll be looking at a whole bunch of different things. So your correlation will be reduced if you take them as model input. The one thing that really hurt me earlier this year is all the speed map guys, their correlation collapsed to 1 and their performance was dismal. There were some famous blow-ups of the speed map guys earlier this year. So be careful if you're taking tips, work out what your tips is looking at too. And the final one I'll talk about is betting stables. A betting stable will often chuck on a particular jockey when they've got something primed for a win. One of the hardest things with racing is a lack of exposed form. you're looking at literally 4 instances of a runner, and you don't. That's a very sparse data set. The stable knows way more than you. So if you look at this stable, the Morgan stable, whenever they whack this better jockey, Cahill, on board, he's got a 44% pot at official starting price, not BSP, SP. Small sample size, but it's something out there that's known, right? So if you can find these little trends, that's a big pot. And like I've taken advantage of that and had a few winners. As you said, we've got a bigger sort of something coming up. So I'll throw it back to you and leave some time for Q&A.
No, awesome. I'm going to swap across to Michael so we can get through the other half of our thoughts there, and then we'll come back to you, Nick. Hi, Michael, we got you back. We do.
Yes, Murphy's Law. You know, I would have liked to have dropped out of some of the meetings I was on today, but anyway, I've dropped out of this one.
You and me both. It's 100% feel your pain, no judgment at all. So we were about at the point where you were, I think, starting to talk a little bit about your approach to modelling.
Yeah, so the key thing I would say to anybody starting from scratch or even those that have been a bit advanced and going through is modelling and automation need to climb hand in hand. You need to do a lot of stuff manually and check it and make sure that what you want it to do is right in your mind, in your, you know, as the edge you're trying to gain and the thing you're trying to model, and then you go off and you automate that bit. And then that speeds up a little bit more. And then you can go off and then you can fine tune that bit. Do stuff manually first and let the automation follow your ideas and let the automation follow, you know, the analysis and the stuff that you're doing on whatever platform or whatever sport you're using it on. I find that's a key bit. So yeah, you test everything manually and methodically first before you then automate. There's no point going off and building a fancy stuff because you're a software engineer and you can download a whole bunch of prices and then you can see it all on all these nice dashboards and then you go, what am I going to do? It's kind of like do that in order to satisfy the various ideas that you're testing is my key, you know, one of the key takeaways. You know, and I was saying we're all trying to find an edge. You've got to if you're new to this or you've been in it for a long time, do the stats, do the maths. You know, this is a statistical game. It's a mathematical game. If you just want to be a punter and you're doing some ideas, that's great. But spend some time to understand some of the, you know, normal curves and understand distributions and understand the mathematics behind probabilities and all that sort of stuff, because you need it. You're going to need it if you're developing any sort of model and doing any sort of analysis. And I don't mean go back to the textbooks, but just read the stuff and get yourself comfortable with the mathematics and everything that you're doing, because it'll help you along the way if you've got a bit more of a maths and a stats understanding of punting in general. I'll say for sure.
It's so much easier these days to learn too, I think. You know, even 20 years ago, it was even 10 years ago, it was a very different world. You know, and absolutely. I think some will go back and hit the textbooks, whereas now, like, there are so many resources and so many people prepared to learn and share that it's less onerous.
Yeah, and one of the takeaways I wanted to get into before we get to the questions was there was a question about psychology through the earlier before the thing started, and I just want to talk about the psychology briefly and how, you know, we all have to deal with the highs and the lows and, you know, variance as people call it, but it's, you know, it's losses, it's a whole bunch of stuff. What I find really, really helpful is to force yourself over time. If you're not comfortable straight away, to do it later, but force yourself to deal in log scales and percentages. You know, everything that we do, we multiply our pool by 8%. Things grow exponentially. Hence, you need log scales to look at your results. You need to understand your percentage wins per day. As opposed to dollar values. I mean, no one likes to lose $1,000 or $5,000 or whatever it happens to be. But, you know, when I start a year, I might put a small amount of funds in. And, you know, if I go from 5,000 down to 4.5 grand, I've lost 10%. Okay, that hurts. I've lost $500. And then it continues to grow. But then if at 50 grand and I lose 5 grand, that's okay. It's still 10%. I don't like losing the $5,000. It's a bigger dollar value, but it's still just 10% of the pot. And if you can get in your mind that what I'm winning or losing is a percentage of what I'm playing with, you can sleep better at night. You've got to try to move away from dollar values and work on what percentage am I winning.
What period do you try and do those reviews on? Do you look like, obviously everyone looks daily, but do you try and ignore the daily variance and look at weekly or monthly? Do you have a sort of period that you tend to go to?
So what I do is, because I do look constantly at, I've got a download to my phone of because my thing is running 24/7, and I've got a constant stream of what the value of my portfolio is. What I've calculated is I look at the max and min of any one day, and I look at the max and min of the next day. And I look at that over time.
Like a candlestick?
Well, yeah, and if you look at the maximum today versus the min tomorrow, that drops by, on average, 10%. Even if the portfolio is going up, my particular model, that can be 10% lower than the maximum. So I have a big win. Life's great. I'm all happy. And, my portfolio goes up to here. In my mind, I go, okay, I can expect to see at some stage tomorrow, that might be as low as here. And then I can go, okay, well, don't stress about the fact when you have a couple of losses in the morning, or, Manchester United goes off and kicks a ridiculous number of goals and something goes crazy. It's okay, because that's part of my natural variance. And if everybody who does a model understands their own particular ranges of what their daily variance is, I think we'd all sleep better at night and can just move on to doing the improvements.
It's what I try and talk about is knowing your tolerance for that variance.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly what that range is. Can you cope with? And I like the percentage better than the number one. Absolutely. But even realistically, when you're looking at numbers, what's the most that you could cope with going down and not turn it off? Because if your trend is this, but you get down to here and you turn it off because you can't cope, you're never going to go back up again. And you shouldn't bet more than you can cope with in that variance curve.
Yeah. And that's why I say use a log scale, because my log scale is a 2 times log scale. So every line on my nice graph is a doubling, and at various times suddenly it'll go from one line down to the other. I've lost 50% of my pool at some stages, but if you look at what happens after that, that's okay. It comes back. So I can cope because you look at it on a log scale. I think that's important.
Oh, I like that. I really do. Was there any other, did you have other points there? I think you were going to talk about seeding a little bit, weren't you?
Market making. Market making is get out and do it. Everybody have a go. Don't sit there and it's fun. I enjoy. I enjoy market making. So I now market make a lot on the AFL. Every game this year, about 2 days before, if you've seen prices appear in the total game score, winning margin spread, they've generally been my prices, because I will download the game and it's completely blank, and I will chuck out my prices there. And invariably what that does is triggers someone else's bot, and something else kicks in there, and then the prices get beaten, and then mine will come back in and beat it a little bit, and then it sort of sits stable for a while. But it's quite rewarding. It's been rewarding, and what you're doing is you're an early adopter. You've got a chance to get in there and set some prices and get the market moving, and eventually someone might match one of your unrealistic offers of prices, which is good.
I like you talking about that, because I think generally there's a perception that market making isn't profitable, and that if it was, everyone would do it. Yeah. I think this comes back to sort of that know your edge and know your niche. And it definitely can be. I work with lots of people who are market makers in lots of different areas. It's not one size fits all. The other thing that I will very, very openly say is, if you're interested in market making, talk to us. Talk to me, give me a call, we'll have a conversation, because we are very keen to support people like Michael who are coming to the party and putting money into the markets, particularly early. We're all about the liquidity in our market. So, we're very happy, more than happy. We're thrilled to be able to facilitate that as much as possible. did you have any other points, Michael, before we open up to some questions?
No key points. I think I've stepped through most of the stuff in the the time I've been on air. Sorry about dropping out, everybody.
Great. Cool. Well, let's grab Nick back on too. And I wanted, so there was a question that came through, Nick, as a follow-up to what you were saying earlier. Have you tried automating bet placement with the corps as well as with Betfair? I know you've got
there are some, only marginally, because with corps, there's so many things that can go wrong. Even if you're doing it manually, you need to double and triple check. I think it would be, you can do it, but I think it would almost be harder than doing, like, you've got partial placements, you've got unknown responses, you've got sort of, I'll let you on for 100 rather than 200. It's a very, very nuanced conversation at times to get a bet on with a bookie.
Light way of putting it.
Yeah, it depends too, right? Like some are sweet, and then there's others, notorious that will offer you a $2.40. You go to whack 500 on, and they'll come back with a $2.40 counter offer, literally. So it's very hard. I don't think it would help my betting. I track my mistakes where I bet on the wrong horse, and I'm actually up on that. I don't know why. I think I've got good karma because I'm a really nice bloke. And yeah, I'm up about 4K on mistake bets this year, which I'm happy with.
Don't rely on that.
No, but it's I reckon I do have good karma. And then the other point, the psychological point that Michael was speaking about, man, that's so hard. It's really
your variance.
Sorry?
How do you manage your variance? What's your sort of approach?
White knuckles. It's hard, right? Because you don't know when, that sort of cliff detection.
When's there a change? I think that's one of the really hard things is when is its variance? And when, like I said earlier, is it actually a shift that you need to
in the market? Yeah. And it's not just me getting it wrong. Like, go and look at, there's so many well-known tipsters who have had a horror year. So someone posts on Twitter, there's a service, 19 out of 20 of their professional tippers are behind on the year. It's been a quite difficult year for anyone doing speed maps. I don't really understand why that is, but speed maps have been crook all year, and they were crook as in autumn. Anyone doing a speed map was getting skinned alive. You can see a few of the tips up on the guys providing them from the hub, and some of them are having a rough time. Some big names have shut down, and they're guys who've been doing it 15 years. So it's very, and so that goes back to my other point, is run lots of systems, and seek, as with the stock market, a correlation of zero is the holy grail, because then you can just whack positive expectancy on top of that and have sort of a vacuum cleaner model which scoops up value if they're non-correlated. So look for things, and I think there was a question, what would I call a soft model? A model that's only looking at a few things. If you've got 8 filters in your model, it's probably brittle. And those filters are just back-fitting noise. There's a whole bunch of literature on how you do testing. But if you've got more than 5 filters, I'd be really scared of the walk-forward progress of your model.
Yeah. Are you overfitting?
Yep, 100%. It's so easy to do because there's so many crazy anomalies, and racing changes, like the exit of the Weir stable in Victoria changed that very profoundly. And I recently, Pike leaving WA has left a huge hole. The jockeys don't know how to race without him, because you had Pike, and then the race was built around Pike. And now they're really struggling. WA is a totally different ball game sans Pike. It really is. Like, I'm sort of staying out of WA a bit just because he was such a massive factor. So if you've picked up some Pike factor in your model, and like 3 of your factors are Pike specific, what he'll do on a favourite, you're going to break pretty quickly, especially if you don't know that it's Pike, and Pike's living in Bendigo or Ballarat or wherever he is at the moment.
I think that's one of the tricky things is how much do you need to know what you're modeling, and there are different takes on that and different answers, and I think a lot of it comes down to what sort of model you're building, and what inputs you're using into that model. Because we've got some very successful people who know precious little about racing.
Yeah.
As in, like, I hated to be the one to break it to them. There was a difference between, harness and gallops, that sort of level of nothing about racing. But then, you do, the other end goes, the more you know about the data that you're working with, the more you can avoid negative variance, the more you can, respond to what's happening in the industry.
I think it counts to know something, to know that Darren Weir's not training horses anymore is a very significant factor for Victorian racing. Very, very significant. So when that occurred,
I think it's relevant in terms of knowing what you can look at historically.
Yeah, if your model, if you didn't know who he was and how dominant he was, and that he's now no longer there, and your Victorian models are going belly up, that would be a problematic situation to be in.
No, I agree. Michael, I have a couple of questions on your AFL coming in here. One with a big thank you from Juppy saying, thanks for putting the money up, super appreciated, and that it really helps start the markets, and amen from me. But then a follow-on question from Ewan saying, how have you found the AFL season this year? Like, lots of people have found it really challenging. A lot of people just aren't betting it. When we talked to Jason Wong a few weeks ago, he's like, I'm just not doing it because it's scary. What have been your highlights? What have been your lowlights? How have you found it?
Yeah, it's been difficult. The shorter quarters, fundamentally changed the stats and the fitting of the way the model sits. My edge, I guess, for without giving away the farm, is that when you fit any sports type, and you look at their scores, the scores and the spread of scores, the team scores and the total scores sort of look like they fit a normal distribution. And most people can fit a normal distribution curve to it. And I don't think it is. It's not. It's something that's slightly different. And the thing that I've discovered is my edge. Okay, so historically, that was always nice on the AFL. But when you suddenly shorten the quarters and you suddenly change how long they've got to play, that fundamentally changed that distribution of scores and how you predict what the total game score is going to be, what the margin is going to be, what the individual team score is going to be, because of that shortening of the quarters. And I started the year thinking that it was going to be like just a version of the previous years, and it wasn't quite that way. They haven't got the time to wind up. There's a lot of weird, flat quarters where people didn't score anything, and that fundamentally changed the fitted model of the total score. So trying to put prices to that was very difficult. And it wasn't until about halfway through the year that I stopped being pig-headed and I stopped going, you know what, it's not the same as previous years. I need to really adjust some parameters and analyze what's happened just in 2020 and tweak those models to go, okay, what's happening? And then things started to move a bit better after that. But it's been a weird year, absolutely.
How far into a season do you feel you need to go to then be prepared to model the data from that season?
Yeah, well, like I said then, I was prepared to stare it down in the eyes and go, no, I'm right, you're wrong. The world is wrong and I'm right. I think we all think we're very right and fight against whatever the world's telling us. But I probably should have acted a bit sooner. But you've got to make a call at the start of it, particularly with sports, you've got to make a call as to go, okay, how's this season going to go? And it did fundamentally change. I was happy. I wasn't losing. I just wasn't making as much as I thought I should have done for that first half. And it was like, why not? And so I went back to the books and I went back and started tweaking. And it was quite literally sort of around 8, round 9, 10, something like that of the AFL that I went, nah, going to change everything.
Have you found that soccer globally has been a bit like soccer in Australia post-COVID? I'm using that very, very loosely. I mean, post-March.
Yeah.
I'm not in touch with the rest of the world. I know it's not soccer, AFL aren't the same thing, but I know you bet soccer. Have you found that that's been the same globally?
Yeah, like there's been some big scores that don't usually happen, and I can't think of a reason for that because they haven't changed their game completely. They've changed a little bit about the number of substitutions they can do. What I do find every year in soccer is that it performs very differently at the back half of the season as opposed to the start of the season and the mid. It's not like AFL. There's no grand final, so towards the end of the season, they know, someone's on top of the table, someone's definitely going to be relegated, someone's going to be promoted, and there's a whole bunch of teams that are safe, that are just sort of sitting in no man's land. That they can't win the title, they're not going to get relegated. So they probably start changing a few things. They probably just throw in some new players. They probably try a few new ideas because it doesn't really matter if they win or lose. They can experiment a little bit. So that fundamentally changes the game. And I actually find I make more money at the tail end of the season because of that. The COVID side of it, that's really just thrown in a whole bunch of really random scores. I find it, and I don't particularly care because my model lives off what the market's telling me. I don't predict what the score is going to be. I let the prices tell me. But yes, but what it has done is it's put some pretty random scores, and it probably has fluctuated my winnings a little bit more.
In terms of, we're at 7 o'clock, I don't know when that happened. I'm going to open one more question to both of you, and Nick, I'll let you answer first. But as a takeaway for the guys, and maybe you can have a little bit of a follow-up think and post any other thoughts that you have maybe to Slack. But what resources do you recommend when it comes to modelling, punting, risk statistics, etc.? What books, blogs, YouTube channels, there are lots of other resources out there, but what are your key go-tos, especially, let's say, for someone who is in the beginning to intermediate part of their journey?
Yeah, I'd probably start Ray Dalio's book. I'd read that like 8 times. Principles by Ray Dalio. Best book ever. It's wonderful. Yeah, that's really good. In terms of racing, Sky Thoroughbred Central and Racing.com. Turn off Sky One. It's just rubbish. Go to those secondary channels if you want people to explain to you what's really happening. Find some good tipsters who explain how they get their tips, because then you can model that, right? If a tipster says, look, and he'll give you a paragraph and say, oh, look, I'm backing this horse because of X, Y, Z, you can then go and back test that data. So there's no good book on that, right? There's no, all the Don Scott books are 30 years old and the Zimba books. There's no modern really equivalent on this stuff. So I'd watch a lot of the former analysts on Sky, Thoroughbred Central and Racing.com. If you wrote down 20 of the things they said in a day while they're tipping a horse, one of those is probably worthwhile. And you can just go and model most of those, or sort of statistically validate most of those, and you'll be on a winner eventually. A day on the Purple Channel will be a good investment, right?
Sorry, muted myself. Michael, what's your top tips for resources?
My 2 things would be on top of the actual study of your system and everything else, read the psychology books. There's some great resources on the Betfair site. There's some great articles that have been written there. But I've also read a lot of the psychology of stock market investing and understanding how people behave, how you behave yourself. I can't remember the titles, but I will post them on the Slack channel, as a follow up to this. And I found understanding the psychology of people, of markets, of risk taking, and reading some of those books to be really invaluable to understanding yourself and how you cope with wins and losses and everything else. It's just really going to help you through. And like I said before, study some stats. There's great resources online now. Understand the mathematics of statistics and randomness and gambling and everything else. Get the maths in your head so that it's a real second language to you.
Have either of you read The Mental Game of Poker?
No, I haven't.
I've read the Tilt one, I think. It might be that book. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I've had lots of it's not Tilt. It's Tendler. Is that what it's called? Is that his name? Yeah, Tendler. Jared Tendler. Got lots of really successful people who strongly recommend it on what you were saying, Michael, in terms of the not necessarily this sort of wagering specific, but the same sort of risk aversion, how to manage risk. Really highly recommend. Pardon?
Ed Thorpe's book, Man for All Markets.
Yep. I will add, I'm adding links to these to the Slack channel so you guys can find it later if you want. We do have a couple more questions that I've already posted into Slack for you guys to go back to later. If you have any other questions that we haven't got to, please shoot them through either on here or hit us up on Slack, and we'll add the questions into the Meetups channel, and you can join the conversation with the guys. I'm always grateful to both Michael and Nick and everyone else, but these guys particularly, in how open they are in the Slack community to share their learnings, their experiences. And I figure that the more we can learn from each other, the more we've all got a chance of doing a bit better. So and having more fun along the way. I know that's the most inane thing to say, but also you might as well enjoy it, and it's nice to be able to share it with other people. So I don't ever know where the hour goes, so thank you both for taking the time. I hope you guys all enjoyed the session with us. We will put a recording up on YouTube later, probably early next week, if you feel you want to watch it again. Otherwise, I do hope to see you on Slack later and to continue the conversation there. Particularly, I want your thoughts on datathons. So go on and have an opinion if you haven't already. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Michael. Also, big thank you to Ben and Ash in the background, the rest of my team who make these things run with me having to only sit here and talk to you. So I'm very grateful to all of you. Thank you, and I hope you have a lovely evening and stay safe.